Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here, Proven Health Alternatives. I've got my good friend, my esteemed colleague, chiropractic extraordinaire, Dr. Joe Esposito. Joe, let it rip. What's going on?
Did I write that introduction? That was awesome, man. Wow.
I shortened it because if you when they read your bio in the notes, they're going to be duly impressed. Like 3 diplomates, am I right? Or is it 4 diplomates?
Five.
5 diplomates.
Yeah.
That's it. I can only read 3, so that's why I couldn't get to 5.
Yeah. Life is great, man. I've been in practice 40 years and I get more excited every day. And doing this podcast was like the highlight of my month here, just to be on a podcast with you, the master. And I said, this is a great opportunity for two guys to get together, two friends, and let's get some people well.
Yeah, let's have some bagels and lox. Let's chit chat a little bit. Let's
Right.
talk
Of
about
course,
some
gluten-free
things.
bagels, of course, and dairy-free, vegan lox. Yeah. So
You got it. You got it. You're right on the mark. You can get that down in Georgia where you are.
absolutely. We have such a big Jewish community here. The three people I think that are Jews down here. So
They've taken over the world. Look, what can I say?
that's right, one at a
So,
time. So,
you're a
all right,
chiropractor. You've been a chiropractor over 40 years. You see a
correct.
myriad of different conditions. What are the most common issues that you see in your chiropractic practice today?
The number one reason we see patients is pain, neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, classic chiropractic things. The number two reason we see patients is digestive problems. Heartburn, acid reflux, burping, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. And I always say everybody's got it, nobody talks about it. It's not first date conversation. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Joe. A little gassy today. People don't talk about these things.
Right.
But digestion is the key. And I was just talking to this senior housing group, and the owner is huge in the business, said, we don't talk enough about digestion. Digestion is going to be the key to getting people well. I said, oh, you're singing my song. So you got to get the nervous system working, because the nervous system, if it's dysregulated, either overstimulated or understimulated, the body can't work. The brain sends messages down the spine, out the nerves to every cell in the body. So as long as the brain can talk to the body and the body can talk to the brain, we're in good shape. Chiropractic standpoint, pinch nerves, got to fix them. And it's also mobility, because if joints are locked out of place, not only can they pinch nerves, but they wear out. And
Mm,
that's called arthritis, osteoarthritis. And I see arthritis, I'm sure you do too, on almost every patient. It's
sure.
extremely rare to find somebody who doesn't have some osteoarthritis. Then we got to look at the chemical aspects. I would say it's got to tune up the car and put the good gas in it. And
Right.
you got to look at the nutrition. You got to look at the absorption. I don't care what you're eating. If you can't absorb it, it's probably not working very well. So number two reason we see patients is digestion.
Interesting stuff. So musculoskeletal, if you will, central nervous system dysfunction, number 1, digestion, number 2.
Yep,
So can I take it a step further and say those two things are intertwined?
of course. I mean, what controls the digestive system? The nervous system. What controls the nervous system? The absorption of nutrients through the digestive system. So can't have one without the other. And for some reason, most healthcare providers look at two separate things. And I always say, if you have a symptom, high blood pressure, diabetes, those are symptoms. They're not the problem. What's
Right,
causing it is the
right.
problem. And that's a very big shift in healthcare. I don't want to treat diabetes. I want to treat what's causing the diabetes and see how we do with that.
So kind of like the idea of what we talk about many times on this podcast being root cause resolution.
Yes.
So diabetes, osteoarthritis, rotator cuff injury is not root cause. It's a symptom of something that was a reason for that ailment.
Correct.
Excellent. So let's dig into a couple of things. One, chiropractic has evolved. So look what we're talking about here. As the old school chiros 100 years ago, 50 years ago, they talked about just adjustment. And not to minimize the power of a chiropractic adjustment, but now we include these diagnostic skills of digestion, these movement skills, these orthopedic functional skills. So what's interesting is when you go to chiropractor, you should not be surprised if he talks about your gut health. He talks about what over-the-counter drugs you're taking, how you move. So that said, number one thing that we see in our office, lower back pain.
Yes.
What is that encounter going to look like?
Patient comes in, I've got low back pain. What'd you do? I don't know. And then you dig a little deeper. Oh, well, I dug in the garden. Oh, I got in a car accident. Oh, I played football in high school. I've had pain for 30 years and now it's really bad. And then I'll examine his back, but then I'll say, the nerves in the low back might cause back pain, leg pain, hip pain, knee pain. But those same nerves control the colon, the sex organs, and the bladder. So along with this back injury, you might have gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, urinary issues, sexual dysfunction, prostate issues. How did you know that? Patients think you're psychic. Well, the nerve from the low back goes to those organs. And this is the missing link, I believe, in healthcare. You got to get the nervous system talking to the body and the body talking to the nervous system. Then we can address the other issues as well. And when the healthcare profession gets that, healthcare will change forever for the better.
So you're talking about the autonomic nervous system?
Yes, exactly.
So let's give the listeners a little definition of the autonomic nervous system and the balance between the parasympathetic and sympathetic.
Well, there's two types. Autonomic means automatic. That's how I remembered it back in college. You can't control that necessarily. You know, I can't control the fact my pancreas is making insulin right now. I can't control the fact that I'm digesting the salad I just had for lunch right now. So that's the autonomic nervous system. Now, there's two types in the nerve. There's sympathetics and there's parasympathetics. Sympathetic nerves speed you up. Parasympathetic nerves slow you down. I remember S and S, sympathetic and speed up. And you're switching back and forth all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're in sympathetic mode. We're talking, we're thinking, we're having a great time. When I want to digest my lunch, I have to use the parasympathetic mode. If I want to go to sleep, sex, these are parasympathetic functions. And so often there's an imbalance between the sympathetics and the parasympathetics. So you can't digest your food properly. You can't have normal sexual relationships. You don't have good sleep. That's when you have to say, okay, why am I off balance? Why am I dysregulated? And what can I do to regulate and get the balance between the sympathetics and the parasympathetics?
So a good chiropractor is going to look at the interconnection of all the different systems, the central nervous system, the digestive system, which has its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, and try and get to something called the balance or homeostasis.
Yes.
So homeostasis is the complete opposite of dis-ease or disease, if you will.
Disease, not at ease, right? Exactly.
Excellent. So, it's funny, and I'm talking to you, you're a chiropractor. We are without question at times perceived as the bastard child. And, having this podcast is giving me the opportunity to talk to various types of practitioners. And I'm very pleased with all the people that have come on, especially somebody like you. But what I found out is that's just kind of idle rhetoric. I think that chiropractors need to do a little bit better job of explaining what we do, who we are, and all that we bring to the health table. Now, you're very unique in that your office is vastly different. It's 40 years experience, 5 diplomate degrees, you have a vision, you care, you're still pumped, you don't need to work, you look to work, you look to take on more obstacles, more enjoyment, more work. What's so unique about your office?
Well, I would say you need 3 things to have health. You have to have a normally functioning nervous system, normally functioning digestive system, and good nutrition. And medicine oftentimes ignores all 3 of those things. Not always, but oftentimes. But it's shifting, it's changing so much. When I first got in practice 40 years ago, you couldn't even talk to a medical doctor. They weren't even allowed to talk to you. They could lose their license just talking to you. And now, today alone, I've spoken to 2 surgeons and 1 general family practitioner about patients. They were stuck on some patients. They didn't know what to do. I had a patient come in yesterday, had a broken leg. I don't want surgery. Took an x-ray. It's a dislocated fracture. You need surgery. This is not a chiropractic case, but I want to get your nervous system as healthy as it can.
Great.
Get your digestive system right. Get the nutrients in there so you do well going into the surgery and do well coming out of the surgery. And that's where we can integrate the healthcare. And I think that's what makes us unique in healthcare. Is there are some chiropractors who just want to do spine. That's great. There's a place for that. There's some people who just want to do nutrition. There's a place for that. But I think you got to have the package to get optimum health.
Rehab versus rehab. We can do both. And I agree with you. I think one of the biggest mistakes, and I hope this is a takeaway for people listening, they need to, without question, do prehab. Hey, I'm going in for surgery in 2 weeks, and I'm going to do nothing between now and the next 2 weeks. It makes no sense. Come on, let's get the inflammation down. If I'm going to go in a ring with Mike Tyson, if I can use this as an analogy, I want to be in the best shape to get my beating. I don't want my beating to be so bad that I can't respond to it. If I could use that. And I think
Yeah.
that's the mindset. That may be the problem. That's a trigger. They need to press a different lever in thought and understand I'm going to stay as healthy as I can no matter what I encounter. So
Yes.
prehab versus rehab, we do both.
Yes. And that's unique in the health field.
It is.
And again, you can do rehab, but if a bone is out of place, you're building up strong muscles around crooked bones. I want you building up strong muscles around straight bones. Still do
Love
the
it.
rehab, but you got to put the bones back in place too. And that's when you see the exponential growth and healing that occurs that's missing in so many cases.
You know, it's an interesting thing when we say bones in line and everything like that, and it's based on the spinal alignment. Can you go into just a little bit more detail? Because I haven't had any chiropractors or chiropractic, if you will, on the podcast.
Sure, of course. I mean, chiropractic is the core. That's the base. We can do nutrition, we can do digestive, but you have to physically put everything back in place. I don't care how good a gas you put in your car, the tires have to be lined up, or it's not going to run right. And so realigning everything is going to be the key, because if a bone is out of place, it can pinch a nerve. 90% of our nerves don't feel pain. You don't feel your blood pressure, your spleen, your kidneys, your thyroid, your toenails. So my concern when I treat a patient is not just the 10% that feel pain. I test the 90% that don't feel pain. Because I always tell patients, I don't want to get you out of pain. I want to get you well. And there's a big difference. And some people say, oh my God, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
You guys have done a great job getting me out of pain. Now you're talking about my thyroid, my spleen, my kidneys, my stomach, my enteric nervous system. Nobody's ever talked about that before.
Wow.
I would say nobody's even talked about the 90% that don't feel pain, much less done anything about it. And
Yep.
that's what makes our clinic unique, is we try to get to the cause of the problems.
So pain is a sign. It's sort of the alarm that lets you walk into the room and decide which room is on fire, if you will.
Exactly. I use the pain to trace, okay, you're in pain here. What's
Mhm.
causing the pain? Oh, that same nerve controls your spleen, your kidneys, your sex organs. And let's go ahead and fix that. And then I'll check with the patients after a few visits and say, hey, listen, how's that leaky bladder doing? You know, I haven't been leaking like I used to. How's that asthma doing? I haven't had an asthma attack. Now, I'm not treating the asthma. I'm treating nerve supply to the lungs to help with the asthma.
So
And
you're looking at the spinal cord or the spinal column as the tree, like this.
there you
You're
go.
looking at the nerves as the branches.
They go
And
out. Yes.
what we both can see as the soil, because you want to look at the tree and the branches to get to the soil so you can get to that idea of root cause resolution.
Exactly. And
Fabulous.
that's the missing link. And I hope in our lifetime we see that as this is the portal of entry for healthcare. Sometimes you need drugs. Sometimes you need surgery. Sometimes you need other interventions. But let's get the body as healthy as it can along with these other interventions. I have surgeons many times send me patients and say, Joe, Phil is blood pressure is too high. They won't approve surgery. I can't do surgery on him. I'm going to send him to you. Get his blood pressure down. And I tell the surgeons all the time, now listen, if I do this, he might get well enough that he doesn't need surgery. So I don't want to steal your patient. I'm just telling you. And they're like, we can't do surgery anyway. So if you can get him well enough, we didn't lose anything. But if you can get him well enough to have the surgery, great. So nobody loses in that business. And then the patient gets the care they need too.
I see a growing movement of integration even within the medical model. I mean, Harvard's got a chiropractor running a floor. There are chiropractors that have hospital rights in Wisconsin.
Uh-huh.
2016 Olympic team had a chiropractor as the lead medical doctor. I know that's almost an oxymoron.
Yeah.
I mean, the strides that the chiropractic field have made in the last decade or two has been enormous. But that said, inside your practice, what therapies and treatments do you find help your patients most? What's your go-to?
Adjustment, of course, is the go-to for everything. Every patient gets a nutrition evaluation. Let's see what kind of symptoms you're having. These are some recommendations I'm going to give you. And I tell my patients this, give me 60 days. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So what? I lied to you. But if I'm right, which I am, then we see some progress. Then we have acoustic wave therapy or shock wave therapy. Excellent for breaking up scar tissue, increasing circulation, recruit stem cells into the area. We have cold laser, which I know you're a huge fan of. Love my cold laser, activates the mitochondria in the cells, does everything from brain stimulation to hair growth to so many different things, but it's so therapeutic. So we have chiropractic, acoustic wave therapy, cold laser, nutrition. I've studied a lot of neurology, so I do a lot of neurological work with my patients. Something as simple as balancing out the part of the brain called the cerebellum, so they're not as dizzy, so they don't fall as much. Big thing we do with seniors, that's a big fear of, is falling. Balance out the cerebellum, and many times they have more stability. So it's quality and quantity of life that we're adding. And
What?
chiropractic is the most effective, least expensive treatment.
That's right.
Back pain. And this is, I was in a meeting today and they said, what's the biggest aggravation? What's the biggest shortcoming you have in your field? I said, it's the most effective, least expensive. If I was getting my air conditioner fixed, if I was getting my cars fixed, if I was getting my shirts ironed, I would want the most effective, least expensive treatment. And chiropractic is there. And I'm hoping that, well, it is happening. The world is getting that message. That we're not just backcrackers. We're actually healers and we get the body well.
Well, I'm going to delve into that because that's a salient point. Why do you think we are the most effective, most inexpensive, non-medical procedure encounter in healthcare today?
It's a unique form of healthcare. Nobody in the world does what a chiropractor does. It realigns the vertebrae, balances out the muscles, and the work that you and I do, and the doctors that have done the extra work, aside from just getting a degree, changes the world. It changes the neurology. It changes the chemistry in the body. And I think simplicity. I really think the simplicity is the thing that works the best. If a bone is out of place, put it back in place. I don't know how to make it any simpler than that. And the simplicity is the thing that works so well. And the challenge I think we all have is patients get well and they don't understand only 10% of the body is fixed if they start getting pain relief. We still got 90% of the nerves to work on. And so compliance is the big issue, but that's where education comes in. That's what people like you, who are such great educators, can tell the patient it ain't about pain. It's about a lot more than that. And when you do that, patients go, okay, that makes sense. I want to do this.
Pain's a signaler for something wrong in a system. And my dad said, it's that alarm that we referred to before. And my dad used to notoriously get up in the middle of the night when the alarm went off and he took the battery out. I said, Dad, those are all the drugs that everybody takes because you're losing the signal.
Yes.
$71 billion industry, nutritional supplements and growing. CVS, right. Amazon, the street corner, the bodega, anywhere you want to get it. Do you feel that supplements are worth the investment for the American population?
My grandfather came over from Germany in 1923, told me one time, he says, always buy the best. It's always cheaper. And boy, is that true. Because so many supplements on the market today are not what they say they are. They can be toxic, like fish oil sometimes. If you get a fish oil, it's not a quality fish oil. It can go rancid, and that's worse than nothing. And so you have to be careful about getting the best. And so is it worth it? I can't imagine a day going by without taking my supplements. It's not even something I can fathom. I can fathom death before I can fathom not taking my supplements because the supplements are so key. And even though I eat a really good diet and I eat a lot of raw food, I haven't had animal products in 39 years.
Wow.
You still need to supplement the diet to get optimum health. I don't want to survive. I want to thrive. And so quality supplements, if your goal is to be healthy, it has to be part of it. And it's so inexpensive. All the supplements I take is still less than a fancy coffee at one of those fancy coffee shops.
100%. I always told everybody, give up Starbucks, put it towards your supplements. You'll benefit greatly. Drink the coffee at home without question and get Absolutely. It organic.
Yeah, you got to do organic. If you're going to do coffee, please never touch anything that isn't organic. It's the most, depends on the article you read, the most sprayed food there is when it comes to fungicides and chemicals. And so you're drinking those things. And when they roast it, it creates something called acrylamides, which are known carcinogens. So please, please, please do organic coffee only.
You are preaching to the choir. Mold and mycotoxins. We can continue to go on and on and on. Yeah. So which supplements do you think are most valuable for the everyday user? So I always use an example. I got a buddy of mine who listens and he goes, Rob, make sure you ask the guest, give me 3 to 5 takeaways. So we were at that moment right here. Give him 3 supplements he's got to take.
Okay. Vitamin D3 with K2. All of us are so deficient in D3, unless you're working outside. And in the winter, it doesn't matter if you're working outside. The UVB rays from the sun are hitting on an angle. It doesn't activate the cholesterol. You're not getting vitamin D. Vitamin D3, but it has to have vitamin K2 with it. Because one of the many, many things that vitamin D does, it helps you absorb calcium and brings it into the blood vessels. Vitamin K2 takes it from the blood vessels and brings it into the bones. If you take D3 without K2, that can be dangerous. If you take D3 with K2, that should be the law. And I recommend 10,000 international units a day.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one. A methylated B complex. Because 44% of us have a MTHFR gene flaw where we can't convert it into a usable form. Methylation means it's converted into a usable form. That's a simple definition. And I'm just talking to somebody I work with here. She has a son. She was adopted, born to a drug addict parents, and she adopted him at birth, and he's super hyperactive, but super smart. And I befriended him because the kid does. If you ever dealt with people that are on a spectrum, they're very strict on what they eat. They're very strict on what they do. So I became his friend, and I said, "Listen, I'm going to give you a present. Don't tell your mother that I'm giving you this. This is a present from me to you, and I want you to." And I told the mother, of course, I want you to take one of these capsules every day. And it's just a methylated B complex. And I said to the mother a week later, "What's happening?" She goes, "He's in a special class with a special tutor. He is now 2 weeks ahead."
Wow.
And she says he never was always behind. Now he's 2 weeks ahead, and he wants to do more. "Mom, I want to get 5 weeks ahead. I want to get 10 weeks ahead." With the methylated supplements, the body is able to utilize them. If you have cyanocobalamin, cyano is cyanide, and it's attached to a B12 molecule. Why would you take cyanide? Because it's cheap. Methylcobalamin. Folic acid, not a good idea. Folate, good idea. So D3 with K2, methylated B complex. I have a product called Dr. Joe's Essential Source, which is prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes, complete multivitamin. That's the granddaddy of all vitamins. I created it. It's a powder. And people say to me all the time, "Why don't you put it in a capsule?" Because it will be easier to take in a powder. It tastes fine, but I have to scoop it and mix it with something. I just want to take capsules because the price would skyrocket if I put it in capsules. So when I have supplements, I want to make it so affordable that people can't say no. So I would say Dr. Joe's Essential Source, B complex, D3 with K2, if I had to pick three.
Now give me one that's coming down a pike that he can see the light, but he can't make out the shape of the car.
Okay, well, I just invented one, actually. It's a nitric oxide with ginseng in a chewable. And it tastes like sweet tarts. If you remember when you were a kid, sweet tarts.
I do.
And I love these things because they taste great. And I take it right before a workout, and I feel amazing. In fact, I was just upstairs, and I was talking to my my office manager. And he said, "How many nitric oxides did you take today?" I said, "I only took one. That was all, two." Yeah. He said, "Well, you're all pumped up." I said, "Well, I'm going to be on Dr. Silverman's podcast today." I was all excited. I was like a little kid. I couldn't wait for the time to come. And he says, "I knew you were up to something." So nitric oxide is so important because as we get older, nitric oxide, you produce it in your blood vessels, and it opens up your blood vessels. And as you get older, your nitric oxide production drops. And so by taking supplement, you can't take nitric oxide. It's a gas. You take the precursor to nitric oxide. I take citrulline. Citrulline converts into nitric oxide, opens up the blood vessels, and increases circulation to your heart, your lungs, your brain, energy levels through the ceiling. And it also works if men have performance issues when it comes to sexual dysfunction. Because one of the reasons men can't get aroused is they don't have enough nitric oxide. We can give you little blue pills. Little blue pills just activate the nitric oxide. If you don't have enough, the pill won't work. Many times when I give men nitric oxide support, they don't need the little blue pills. We check the nerve supply in the low back to the sex organs to make sure it's working. We get the nitric oxide levels up. And in many cases, it helps. And it does wonders for brain function, too. Because people, when I do my live radio shows, we get callers from literally all over the world. I don't know what the question's going to be. I'm live.
Yeah.
I got to be sharp. And the nitric oxide is a game changer when it comes to brain function, too. Look at you, your nitric oxide sticks.
Got it. Just wanted you to know I'm with you, brother.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it out to you. And again, we're not live. We're recorded, but we can always edit it, but we won't.
Okay.
Two Northeast guys, we don't edit.
Right.
NADH.
NADH? Oh, it's great. Yeah. but you get that from the you got to get the B vitamins as well.
Right.
Make sure you have the precursors. But that helps the mitochondria work. It helps the cell function and metabolize. So yeah, there's a lot of these, I want to say off-brand, but the ones that aren't as popular that are so important. Yes.
Right. And I think something else that's a train, that's a runaway train coming towards us, is the idea of peptides. But we won't go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you, what are some misconceptions that you find the public has about complementary healthcare?
Is this a real doctor? I get this one a lot. Well, you're not a real doctor because you're not a medical doctor. Medical doctors they're very, pigeonholed in their learning. There's some that are very progressive and have learned outside the box. But just because you're not a medical doctor, that doesn't mean that you're not qualified. I'm not qualified to do surgery. I'm not qualified to prescribe drugs, but I am qualified in other areas. And still there's little lingering, not so much anymore, but little lingering that still says, well, you're not an MD. Why do the MDs refer their patients to us then? Why do they come into me as patients? One guy, famous surgeon here in Atlanta, he called me up. He says, will you personally see my wife? You're the only doctor I trust seeing my wife.
Great.
Cool. That's great. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is that insurance doesn't cover it. Insurance doesn't cover anything anymore. You got $6,000 deductibles, $100 copays. So just because insurance doesn't cover it doesn't mean it's not valid.
Or valuable.
Right? Exactly. So, and no, it's changing. It's changing dramatically. When I have workers' comp companies come to me and say, hey, Dr. Joe, this patient can't get treated because they have high blood pressure. Can you work with them to bring down the blood pressure naturally so we can get the surgery, get the therapy done, and we can get them off our books? I mean, it's a business decision there. We're paying these people disability because they can't get well, because they're too sick. Can you help us on that? Sure, love to. So when insurance companies come to us, that's when the world is changing for the better, and it's exciting. So.
There was a study, and this is not to pick on anybody at all. This is just sharing information, and I feel bad. The slide says 31.4%. There's been a decrease. This was in JAMA Open Network in July of 2024. They did a study from April 2020 to January 2024. They had an equal amount of Democrats and Republicans in it because this is an important concept.
Okay.
Most of the people who gave the dissenting vote were of minorities and some females. And essentially, it was in all 50 states that 31.4% decline was in the trustfulness of the medical field and the hospitalizations. And that's unfortunate because that kind of bleeds out to every other type of practitioner. Yeah. But we have ranked high in people who see us. We see 12% of the population. People who see us trust us. And I feel terrible about that number for the medical doctor because, not to get into the politics of it, they kind of got attached to something that wasn't their fault, et cetera, et cetera. But this point is, if it's a young chiropractor, if it's a young alternative medicine doctor, if it's a young MD, we should all be talking about trustfulness, and the communication with the patient. And I think part of the problem is that in some instances, it was the same old song. Look what we're talking about now.
Right.
So try and imbue everybody who's listening with enthusiasm. Look what we're talking about now. Talking to the patient, looking at the patient as a whole, looking at alternative methods. You yourself stated very succinctly, you said, drugs have their place. Surgeries have their place. You and I both go to medical doctors. Sure. We refer and get referrals from medical doctors. So it should be, the future of medicine should look integrated at the very least.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And it is, people feel like they're getting scammed, and got to realize it's a business too. Mm-hmm. If somebody comes in, I would say, if I go to a barber and do I need a haircut, the answer is yes. Mm. And so if a surgeon says, do I need surgery? You probably do. Let's try alternative methods first. Some doctors do, but many doctors are like, well, you asked me if I need surgery. Of course you need surgery. And many doctors don't even know that this exists. When I meet with doctors and with my radio show, I get calls all the time, and people say, I've been in practice 20, 30, 40 years. I never looked at it like that before. I was on the air Sunday night, and I got a text from a friend of mine who's a medical doctor. He goes, Joe, I've known you for 20 some odd years. He said, I never thought about the nerves going to the organs that being an issue.
It's great.
I never looked at it like that before. He knew it. He just never put it in that context before. He says, thanks for sharing that with me. That was great.
You are creating an awareness that is going to make an indelible mark on many people's health lives. So within that, what is it like being a known radio show host? The pressure, the reach.
Well, people, there is pressure. I mean, not to sound like a jerk, but there really is pressure. Most people don't know what I look like, but they know what I sound like. And every day, it never fails. I'm out somewhere and somebody goes, you sound like that guy on the radio. And I said, yeah, I am. You're Dr. Joe. And they want pictures. And it's really an awkward situation. But my boss said to me years ago, I've been on WSB radio 14 years now. And my boss said to me years ago, he says, I have a problem with you. And he was a great guy, brilliant man. And I said, uh-oh, what'd I do? He says, I never get hate mail for you. He says, I get hate mail for all the other hosts on our station. I never get hate mail for you. And he smiles, goes, you're not trying hard enough. So it is fun. And it's really neat because people will come up to me and say, I remember I was at a car wash a couple of years ago, and this kid comes up to me and he says, you look like Dr. Joe. Are you Dr. Joe? And I said, yeah. He goes, you spoke at my high school 25 years ago. And I had headaches every day. And you said, stop drinking diet soda and see what happens. He said, I haven't had a headache since. And my mother had spent tens of thousands of dollars. He says, I never thought I'd ever get to meet you and say thanks. So it's really cool to know how many lives you're affecting every day. And that's what drives me. After 40 years, I was like a little kid waiting to get on this podcast today because I couldn't wait to be with you, of course, and spread the word. It's still fun.
Case in point, just what we talked about before. Lastly, where do you see healthcare going in the next decade?
I think that insurance companies are just they're out of control right now. They're making, and again, I don't care about profit. Good for them. It's a business. But they're paying less and less and they're collecting more and more. And people are just finally saying, I can't do this anymore. And I think it's going to implode on itself. And hospitals, of course, are very expensive to run. They make a lot of money, but they spend a lot of money. And I respect that. And if the insurance companies keep paying less and less, people are not going to be spending their dollar at the hospital. They're going to say, what other alternatives are there? Let me try nutrition. Let me try supplementation. Let me try chiropractic care. And when they do, they go, oh, this is what's been missing. So the shift, I think, is going to be driven financially into our laps, which is great. It's good for us. It's good for the public.
I agree. I mean, medical schools now are starting to teach nutrition. Mm-hmm. I've taught a multitude of ground rounds, which has been great. I agree with you. I think your vision is clear. I think we're going to be standing at the top of the mountain, if you will, looking down with that proverbial bird's eye view. I'm excited about it. You definitely excited me. I was looking forward to this too. I have no notes, no nothing. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go with it. And we went with it. It was fun. Hopefully everybody enjoyed. Let me know what you think. I got Dr. Joe Esposito, 40 years of clinical experience, national radio show host, a good friend of mine, without question, a distinctive voice. And don't worry about it. You do not have a radio face. You're good.
I hear that every day.
You're good. My pleasure. Dr. Rob Silverman, Proven Health Alternatives.